Hi Ben, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm good.
How's sunny London?
Well, yeah, a little to be desired here. So, yeah.
I
It's
always
winter.
talk about the weather. Lisa will tell you, don't I, Lisa?
Yeah, she gets out. It's when she doesn't know what to talk about, Ben. so at the beginning of a podcast, the easiest thing to say is, "So, how's the weather?"
It's a really good start.
Do you know, it'll actually be the episode before you. We had Rebecca Weller on, who's the author of A Happier Hour. And right near the end of the podcast, I'd kind of fangirled her that much.
Oh, yeah.
That near the end of the podcast, I kind of lost my train of thought, right? And instead of just kind of going, thanks very much for joining us, Bex, and moving on, I just got all flustered, stared at Lisa with a really creepy face, right? And it was like...
For ages, though.
It was a weird, creepy face. So people who've watched the video will know now where I'm referring to, because I kind of turned and did this like... then said, do you want to ask anything, Lisa? It's like, no, not really. Oh dear. It stayed unedited. It did stay unedited.
Yeah, they all do, because she's lazy. as we said before.
Or am I authentic?
Authentic.
All about the authenticity.
Yeah, let's find the glass half full in this situation. I'm authentic, not lazy.
Definitely true, Alex. Right, Ben, let's talk about you. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to sobriety?
Yeah. So, I'm Ben. I'm 29 now. I keep reiterating 28. I've been sober for 20 months, nearly 21. So coming up to the 2-year mark. It's been a hell of a journey, really, but it's one that I'm in every minute of. So ups and downs, but here we are. What got me to sobriety, basically reaching a point where I couldn't mentally or physically function, I think sums it up. I was a very destructive drinker, so I wasn't ever able to abstain or control. It kind of just slowly the amounts increased to the point where it was a 24/7 physical addiction. And to be honest, the only reason I stopped is because I think mentally I'd got there, but I needed something to push me over the edge, and that was the physical bit. And I remember waking up one morning and just trying to drink, and my body was just not having it. Everything that went in came out, and I remember sitting there for about 3 hours trying to drink a bottle of wine, and it just wasn't happening. And I knew then that, I physically had to stop then. And I don't think at the time mentally I was ready, but my body was forcing an intervention. So I think my journey's been kind of different in that sense, just because I had such a mental obsession where my mind just wasn't ready. And I ended up going to rehab at 27. I stayed there for 4 weeks and then extended by 4 weeks just because I think I needed that time. But luckily it's led me to live the life that I live. And, I have stayed sober off the first try. So I must have had some brain cells in there and done something right.
Definitely.
When you say you were trying to drink in the day, so like that's really hard for me to comprehend, because when I drank, I just drank. It's just like, oh, I'll have it. I wanted it. So can you just go into that a little bit about why were you trying to drink? What was the reason behind it?
What, during the day?
Yeah.
I mean, I drank during the day for about 4 years. The particular time that made me stop was when I literally couldn't get it in anymore. So my body was just repulsed by it. But yeah, day drinking was always a thing for me. People always ask me, when did that start? Because I think people have a mindset that, like the term alcoholic, right, is the guy that drinks in the morning. And it's such a stereotype, and it really, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this.
Yeah, you are right. What we got excited then? Yeah, go Ben. Pour some bombs in there.
And that is the stereotype, though, isn't it? It's like, morning drinker, and when you see someone with a tinny at 11 a.m., it's like, oh, they're an alcoholic. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's probably true, but it's not true for everyone. And for me, it was just a big part of it. And everyone asked me, when was that point? that you started morning drinking, because it's almost like that's when they're labeling, oh, that's when you turn an alcoholic. It's like, no, I've been an alcoholic for my whole life. It's just that's when it inevitably took harder control. And I don't know when it was, but I know it was at least 4 or 5 years that I can remember drinking before work and kind of always drinking off hangovers. Like I can remember doing that since uni days. I was drinking in the morning to carry on the party was my excuse, but really it was curing a problem. So yeah, it's always been a thing for me, and it made addiction very difficult, just because it was really hard to hide. And as an addict, that's all you want to do. You know, especially at work and stuff. And I was, you know, I'd go up to the kitchen and pretend to get a coffee, but neck 2 mugs of rosé in case anyone came in, and holding this. Thinking back, it was madness, but you know, it's what I needed to do at the time. So.
What do you think at that time, Ben? Like when you're going in and you're sneaking it and you're trying to hide it from people. I'm just really interested because I've spoke about this before. My ex was an alcoholic, and he would like sneak drinks and be in absolute denial of it. And it's just something that I can't get my head round, because you know you're doing it, and when you speak to people that have been in that position, they say, I knew I was doing it, but there's no way that they would tell themselves that they were doing it or that anybody else were doing it. So like, what's the headspace at that point of hiding it?
I mean, to be the first thought is that just I need this, so that overrules everything. But to be honest, it depends. So I mean, in the height of it, it's like I would drink before I left the house. So I'd have half a bottle of wine that I had left over from the night before, which was literally a routine. Like you brush your teeth, I had my wine, then I brushed my teeth before I even left the house. But then it's weird, because then on the tube, I'd have a little flask of vodka that was in a Ribena bottle, right? And that was my routine. So I knew that I had enough to carry me through the morning, but the mind never stops. So if I'm on my own in the kitchen, I'm just doing it. And to be honest, you don't even catch yourself half the time until like I heard a door creak or something, and I thought it might be my boss or a colleague. Then I was like, shit, what am I doing? But until that point, you just carry on, because every free minute that I'd have was just like, right, how can I get booze in now? And to be honest, sometimes when I knew I'd have enough to function, so i.e. not have the shakes and stuff like that, especially at work, that was an issue, and that happened quite a lot. But when I'd have enough, it almost became a game in my head. It was like, right, how can I sneak more in? Oh, I wonder if I can go have a cigarette and do a gin and tonic in 3 minutes to, you know, just to play a game with myself.
Yeah.
That's what it becomes. But actually, behind it all is a deep, dark addiction. And you almost like your addiction takes hold of you, manipulates the horrible situation actually in, and goes, actually, let's make a big game out of this all the time. And it's a horrible place to be. But yeah, it's really difficult to see it at the time.
I guess that's what I was kind of getting at with my first question, really. The reason you were forcing drink into yourself in the day is to counter any withdrawal symptoms then, because otherwise people would have known you had a problem, you know.
Exactly. And that's what you're trying to defer from the whole time, right? Is that I've got a problem. And you know, it wasn't as kind of after my friends had a lot of questions, and obviously ex-colleagues and stuff. And they said, well, why didn't you just choose not to do it that day? And it's like, you can't, because I couldn't even hold a pen. Like I mean, towards the end, it was probably about every 2 hours that I'd have to drink. And it got to the point where, like, if I was going into a long meeting at work, I remember I got caught one time. It's quite, well, no, it wasn't funny, but it kind of is now. But I got caught out, and I completely forgot about a meeting because I was arguably drunk in the morning. And someone said, oh, you come into this planning meeting. It was like 3 hours long. And I was like, oh God. Not because I thought, oh, the meeting. It's because I know that 2 hours in, I'd have been sweating, shaking, smelling.
Oh gosh.
And I luckily remembered, I was like, I've got these birthday beers. So a week prior, they'd given me a box of beer for my birthday. So I had to go into my work locker, get the 6 beers out, crack them in the disabled toilet, and drink them all before I went into this meeting. This is in the middle of a busy office. And it's like,
wow.
You know, that I guess that's what made me drink all the time, because I couldn't be seen like that, and nor could I face being like that. So.
And did nobody pick that up then in the office? Did nobody say anything, or afterwards when you've stopped, people said, well, I kind of knew, or?
Yeah, people, I mean, my close friends always thought I had a bit of a deep relationship with alcohol, but stop. I mean, the biggest telltale of drinkers is that you're drunk, aren't you? But at this point,
Yeah.
I'm function. So actually, if I hadn't got booze in me, they'd have been able to tell. But with,
Oh,
it's
gosh.
a normal kind of bubbly Ben. So, you know, I remember one time I was away with work and someone said, God, are you okay? You look horrific. Like, have you got a cold? Because I was sweating and I was fevering and all the rest of it. And obviously they just thought I had a bit of a cold when actually, you know, I just hadn't had a drink in 2 hours. So,
Wow.
yeah, I think I think it's weird, isn't it? Because as I've interviewed people for my blog and stuff, like my old friends, and when they learned where I was in rehab, it kind of like a switch kind of turned for them, and they all went, "Oh, right, that." And it's all of a sudden like the last 10 years of our friendship makes sense for them. It's like, oh yeah, oh right, yeah, that all makes sense now. So
I think that's often the case, you know, either in my experience, and you know, I've had alcohol dependent people in my family as well, and you either know there's a problem at the time, or for sure when they finally realize there's a problem themselves, you go, you know, like it's slipped into place. I don't think anyone kind of just gets away with doing it and nobody ever knows. Personally, I've never found that.
yeah,
But you're
yeah.
in denial, aren't you?
Oh, massively, yeah. I mean, so I've had a therapist through my whole journey from before I went into rehab and stuff, and he planted the seeds kind of on making that change, but I had to grow them. So, but even when I was seeing him, even when, to be honest, when I made the decision to change, I was still in denial. I was kind of like, okay, I'll change because it's what people want me to do. And it's like, I look back now and I'm like, well, obviously people wanted me to, but it was more about me. But my mind was just so controlled. And it's really, we use that word control so much, right, in all these podcasts and stuff that we do. But it's really, really hard, isn't it, for us to describe what that control is actually like. Like people think, oh yeah, I go out for a smoke, but I could do without, or oh yeah, I'll just do this because I enjoy it. It's like, it's pure control at the darkest level. You have you have no control because you're so controlled. It's like this.
Yeah.
So hard.
So with your therapist, have you been kind of exploring the reasons behind your drinking? Is that some work you've been doing with yourself?
Yeah. And I think, you know, I still see him now. So we're now I've seen him for nearly 2.5 years now. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because looking back is something that I think a lot of people try to do, or they do. And I think a lot of people look for the reasons. And as a result of that, I think a lot of people get annoyed by it. And it's something that when I started my journey, I started to get annoyed because I haven't had a bad childhood. I haven't really suffered any severe life traumas. And I haven't, you know, I don't have any obvious things that I go, there it is. But, you know, there's little things. And I think part of my journey actually annoyed because I was like, I can't find why this was so that I could remove it or deal with it. And it's like, I think a lot of people have that. And I speak out about this because it almost drove me to be so annoyed that I was like, right, I'm going to do it again to find out what it is. And it's like, hold on a minute, what are you doing? Like, so we eke in and out of it. And I think a lot of it has to do for me because there's no specific, but like my childhood, I was moved around in 6 schools in 6 years. Like I've never really felt settled in my life. And I think the drinking as well with like my work, I never really felt part of things. So I drank to get over that. And I never really felt like I settled anywhere. And I think that's probably from my childhood. So I think little things like that, like my dad's brother was an alcoholic. So is it gene based? I don't know. I didn't really ever see him, but is it gene based? I don't know. So yeah, I've looked, but I'm not allowing myself to kind of get annoyed by that anymore.
Yeah, kind of not just pinning everything on it, because I think that you hear quite a lot, like you've just said, some people just have no underlying cause.
Yeah.
But anyone who does have underlying trauma tends to be addicted to something, whether that be work, exercise, coffee, alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, whatever it is. If you've had some form of trauma, they reckon you will end up with some form of addiction. And I guess, I do quite a lot of introspection like that, because I want to always find reasons. Lisa's just like, it is what it is, let's move on. I'm very much like, why did I do that? What was causing that? What was the reason? And when you were just saying a second ago, is it genetic? Well, genetics kind of loads the gun, but it's usually the environment that pulls the trigger. And I read that and it really resonated with me that, yeah, there might be some genes, but usually there's something that changes or happens, and it can be subtle, that just sets you down a different path.
And what I like to say now, how I kind of get over it, because I almost want to be more like Lisa in this and be like, yeah, it was there, it's cool, I'm better now. But my mind works like you, Alex. It's literally like, I detail out everything. I'm an absolute stickler for boom, 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 boom.
Oh, I'm not having two of you. I can't cope with this.
Bring it up. But one thing I learned to think in my head is, you know what? I'm addicted to change, right? So in my addiction, I wanted to change my headspace constantly, whether that be because I was uncomfortable, or I needed confidence, or I needed that extra boost, or whatever I thought booze gave me. I was addicted to the change that made me have in my head, right? And now it's like, well, I'm addicted to the change that I've made. So it's kind of, I'm still, it's just a much longer term, addiction, if you will. But it's because I always wanted to change, and I always wanted to change my mindset. And now it's like, now I've actually made the right one. It's kind of, I feel comfortable, and I'm okay with just believing that that's the change that I really needed. And that kind of settles me a bit, because I don't want to go down a deep dark hole of, discovery if I don't need to, because I think also you can pull things out that actually aren't the reason. And you can drive yourself mad with that. I could think, oh yeah, was it my breakup from 6 years ago from that girlfriend that I had for 2 weeks? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's probably not that. So
it's so true. I've done things like that, like tried to go back and nearly, like, not been sure whether I'm actually making things up just to like be. I've rang you, haven't I, Alex? Like, right, I think this could have happened, but I'm not sure whether it really did, or whether I'm making it up, or just looking for, like what you said, for that reason. Go on, Alex.
The drama, so I'm going, oh, it might have done. Yeah,
she loves it. She's like, go on, dig deep, go get a counsellor for this, get one for this. And I'm like, no, it's fine, I'll leave it there, thank you. Ben, what I'd really love to talk to you about, and it's going back a little bit, sorry, but is rehab. And you saying, like it was the physical addiction really that got you there, and the mindset. And I know, because we've spoke to you before with Sober Dave and what have you, about you've got a little bit of the story of your rehab, so I'd love you to share that with us, but also about how you changed your mindset, because it's not often that you get somebody whose body needs to stop before the mind does, is it? I don't know.
Yeah. I think often the body breakdown brings the mindset, right? Because when you're faced with I know a lot of people who basically sees the same that I did and had to be hospitalized, emergency detoxed, whatever. The difference is that's the point that they made the change, right? Because they woke up in hospital and went, oh God, shit. I decided, however, that when I got admitted to hospital, my mum begged me to stop drinking. I stopped drinking so basically I had an intervention. I was in London. My parents came, so my girlfriend at the time called them and said, he needs to go away. So I was like, no, I'm not going. Anyway, they turned up and I was no better to know. So I was like, right, okay, I'm out. So I went to Nottingham. Mum said, because she didn't know the depth of how much I was drinking. No one did. And I was too naive to know the dangers of just stopping.
Yeah.
So Mum just said, why don't we just have a break? Let's go into town, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I seized twice and ended up in hospital. And at that point, like I say, most people go, okay, I'll accept these detox medication, thank you, and I'll go to rehab from hospital. I decided that I would, on the second night of hospital, I was in psychosis. So basically from withdrawals, I didn't really know where I was. I was in a hospital room with my mum, but I was basically drawing on the walls because I thought it was a whiteboard and I was in an office full of people. Anyway.
Wow.
And at that point, when they left, I said to the nurse, I'm going out for a cigarette. And I actually left the hospital, ran across a motorway or dual carriageway to get to a spa shop that I Googled on my phone. I picked up a bottle of vodka. I put it in a plastic container, took that in the hospital with me, and then put it in my water jug. So little did the hospital staff know that the whole first night I was sitting there with a big jug of vodka just sitting in my hospital bed.
Wow.
And it's like, you know, so that's what I mean by my mind hadn't changed, because at that point, you know, the doctor came in and said, Ben, you're 27 and you've seized twice. Like,
Yeah.
changed. And I just ignored it and just, while I was in treatment, went out and did that. And then at the end of the stay, they basically said, we don't have time to detox you because you're only allowed to be in that care unit for a certain amount on basically self, you know, caused problems, which is fair enough because I had no signs of changing either. So, you know, and the first thing I did was leave and went out to Sainsbury's and bought wine. So it then took me 2 months before that real physical kind of feeling that I had before I made the change. So even though my body had told me it had given up by literally seizing, there was no stopping my mind. So that happened. And then 2 months later, I had the physical breakdown and I went into rehab. Yeah. And at first, yeah, I mean, it was horrible. Like, I mean, it's brilliant now because I'm here, but it's awful. I drank all the way there and I was sitting outside in the morning at like 9 a.m. and I just cried. Not because of what was happening or where I was going to go. It was because I knew my life was about to be over the way that I knew it. Yeah. And it's like everything I knew or everything I knew how to do and everything I believed in at the time, which was like, this is how I live my life, was going to be stripped. And I almost just didn't know what was on the other side, you know. And it wasn't a coming out bit. It was like, well, what do I do tomorrow? It's almost like I didn't know what even to do in the morning or what to do with myself. So I finally got in there, and after a week's worth of pretty intense withdrawals, then I kind of started to open the door to making that mindset change. And as I say, it took 7 weeks to do that, and it wasn't easy. And they try to look at your past, they look at all these things, you have to write your life story, and actually you find yourself, I think one of the biggest things for me was almost like you'd find the things that you were looking for so long, right? You blanked out so much stuff for so long that actually when you were trying in your addiction to go, oh, I'm drinking because I'm sad, you don't actually even know the meaning of sad. It was when I started to write my life story, and I remember like I was writing it and I just started sobbing about my grandfather's death, about my uncle's death. I started like really like getting angry about stuff that I was writing about, how I mistreated people, and I was like, what is this? And it was like, actually, here's the brain and the care coming out. And I remember that point and I was like, you know what, this is what I want to feel. Like, I don't want to be numb anymore. And then from there, it just took a lot of therapy and a lot of kind of talking that stuff out.
It's so true. And I think that even, you know, and I'm sure Lisa will agree, even though I've not been where you've been and through what you've been through, I can relate to a lot of what you're saying, like the kind of delayed grief from past events. And when you really feel something for what feels like the first time, I mean, we must have felt things as children and as young adults, but to feel something for the first time, it's so painful and so raw. And then when you feel happiness for the first time, it's like, wow, what is this? I don't think that if you're drinking, you can actually, I know this is a bold statement to make, actually, I feel a bit guilty, but if you're a drinker, even a moderate drinker, I'm not sure you know what it's like to feel real joy. I don't know.
No, I
think you do.
I feel like it's kind of, in this society that we live in, and again, it's very generalized, but as soon as we feel something happy, we often celebrate. And you don't actually, the beautiful thing about being happy now is like, the first thing I actually do is go and spend 10 minutes to myself to just let that sit. And I'm like, and all of a sudden, something this big is like, oh yeah, that's really good. Whereas before, what would you do? Like, I remember, you know, any situation at friends or you win something, it's like, oh, beer's round, woo! And it's like all of a sudden that joy is now dampened.
Yeah.
Straight away, yeah.
So
Yes,
we-
I've never really looked at it like that before. I think, yeah, you've just taught me a little bit of something about the actions there as well. You know, even thinking back to things like graduation and stuff, the champagne flutes were in the boot. You know, like, wow, yeah.
You definitely have delayed reactions to things anyway. And I think, like you say, if you're a drinker, like if something's happened, like the other day I rang you, did I, Alex? I was on my way to work and my real dad, yeah, complicated. Yeah, well, but I know I nearly went there and I don't have to. But yeah, my real dad died in my first year of being sober. So it was just like 2 years ago. And I was driving to work the other day and I rang Alex and I went, I've just realised that my dad's feet are never going to touch this earth again. And it was like, I know it sounds really weird, but it was like all of a sudden, it just hit, like I saw a work van and it must have triggered that feeling of my dad. And then I just thought, oh my God, he's not here. So I'd never bump into him. He's not even on this planet anymore. And then at one time, that would have caused me for that night maybe to feel a little bit sad or whatever, and I would have gone and drank. So to even sit with that feeling, and so we get them delayed reactions all the time, I think, but it's learning, like you said, Ben, to just sit with them, whether they be happy or sad, or it's proper like growth in it, this sobriety. It can be hard work. It's not always easy, which actually brings me on to what I wanted to ask you. What was the hardest part, do you think, about quitting?
An interesting one. I find that hard because my quitting was really controlled because I was in trouble, and I get asked that a lot, and it's kind of, you know, there was no chance for me to do anything different. I mean, it was all hard, don't get me wrong, but after the week one of getting over that I'm going to be here for X amount of time, it's like I think in my head I made the switch that I wanted to just make the most out of it. When you realize that this isn't just, you know, like a very restricted Butlins holiday, it's like this is actually to change your life. You all of a sudden take on a very serious aspect of, okay, I'm going to love my time here with the people that I'm with, because you just learn from everyone. That's one of my favorite things about it. But also you just take stuff seriously. Like you make sure you're there at the sessions and you make sure that you're present and you enjoy the meetings, and I don't know. But I guess that was, once that click had been made, then it was almost easy. It was like I was just all in. But the hardest bit was getting there, because I was definitely an unruly teenager for the first week. Just like, no, I don't want that. Don't give me that. Because I didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be there for a week of it. And it was horrible. I was probably a right arsehole, but they didn't let me leave. So
That's good.
If you could go back.
Now.
Yeah, that's true. If you could go back then to that unruly, I don't want to be here, and say something to help him and to know that it was going to be okay, what would you say, do you think? I know that's quite a difficult one.
That is difficult. I mean, it's
Stop being a naughty boy. That's what you'd say.
I just think it's really good to know what you'd say, because, you know, there might just be somebody listening that it might make that click for. No pressure, Ben.
Yeah, exactly.
Da, da, da.
It's so tough because it's so hard to. How I always think about this is just, I know how hard it is to listen to anything in that situation. You don't want to hear anything, and the fact of the matter is, if I'd have just opened my ears a bit earlier and even related to one thing, I think, while I was there, or stopped being that brat for just a day, it would have made a difference. And I think beforehand, you know, it's the same thing. I almost felt, I think the reason why I'm speaking out so much is just purely because I guess at the time when I had an issue, I think relatability is what I'm getting at, because everyone in the rehab, bar one person, was twice my age. And it's very hard for young people, I think, to grasp that where they're at in their addiction and how far they can. Do you know what I mean? Because you seem invincible.
Yeah.
I certainly thought I was, and that's definitely the feeling that I had in that first week. Was I'm so young, I don't need to be here. Why am I here with these old people? They've got a problem, I don't.
Yeah.
And the more that I then listen to them, and it's like the guy next to me is 60 and he's telling me how he went down to Sainsbury's and was really pissed off the other week because they didn't let him have vodka at 8 a.m. I'm like, I did that. What? You can't be doing that. I did that. And he's like, yeah, we're not so different, you and I, Ben. And I was like, and I ended up being best friends with the bloke. And it's like, he was doing everything that I did, but I'm half his age. And then you know what I mean? It's like, relatability is a tough thing because you don't see someone in front of you that's the same age, but actually if you just open your ears and listen, you'll find that there's a lot of people who are like you but also have made the change not to be like you.
You know, when you just said something, then it really struck me that you were half the guy's age. Like, you could look at that in a really negative way if you wanted to, couldn't you? Like, it's not fair, I've only had half the time of fun that he's had. But actually you've got twice the gift of sobriety now.
And that's exactly what everyone in there said, was like, I wish that I'd have nailed it when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
They fucked up their relationships, their kids, you know, I sit here incredibly, I can be more grateful that I don't have kids right now and that I don't have, you know, any dependents, because I've got that ahead of me and I know I can do that with a real straight head, and I know I'm not going to fuck any of it up. But, you know, for those guys, a lot, and almost actually a lot of their problems were brought around by the fact that they were letting their family and everyone down. So they carried on to numb that and you cycle. And I think although I was in a cycle, but I was in the, you know, cycle of work sucks, friends suck. Like, they're in a cycle of my kid hates me and my wife wants to leave me. And it's like, that's why, I know I'm speaking a bit out of turn there, but that's why I'm so happy that I didn't have that. And actually, it's almost like if I'd have played the tape forward when I was 27 to when I'm 34, still in that state, I certainly, well, arguably, I don't think I'd be here, but you know, it's not even worth thinking about. So
that's such an amazing way of like looking at it. Can I ask you something just really like, just out of nosiness? You know, when you said you had the psychosis, so that was obviously like withdrawal-induced psychosis, wasn't it? With that, do you remember it now? Do you kind of look, have you been told that's how you behaved, or do you remember it?
I don't remember any of it, no. I remember, like, I've got flashes of the room that I was in, and I remember where I stood to have cigarettes, and I remember looking out at the car park swirly staircase, thinking I'm going to climb up that, and then that's what will get me over the motorway. But I don't remember anything else. I mean, so my mum's told me that, you know, after I ran out the first time, basically I ran out a second time because the guy over the bay basically ratted me out for having vodka and I was pissed off. So I decided to go out again. But that time I didn't quite make it back. And I actually pulled the IVs out my arm. So I was bleeding. And a cab driver picked me up and took me home, which I've always said, if he's ever listening to any of these, I am forever grateful, because he dropped me back at my mum's and then they took me back to hospital. So it's almost like I can picture in my head me doing it, but I remember bits. Like, I remember being dropped off at home and my mum looking at me in tears, just going, what is going on? Like, why are you here? We left you in hospital. So no, not really. And
so you don't remember that you thought you were in an office writing on a whiteboard? You've just been told that?
Yeah.
Scary, isn't it? It's a bit, you know, like looking back now, it's kind of scary what this legal drug can be allowed to get us to.
Oh, Alex.
I mean, if people, you know, people think almost like the Blackouts are scary, right? Where we don't know where we've been, but
yeah,
you even when you're absolutely slaughtered, you still have some sense of you is still alive, right? This is like, if you think that's scary, psychosis, just another level, because you're very much like, you know, when you black out, you're tired, or your mind just shuts down because it's like too much alcohol. Psychosis, like, I'm still very much alive, so I've got the power to leave anywhere, go across the motorway, go to here, get in a cab, do this, but I have zero recollection. That is scary.
It is scary. And blackouts for me, you know, like, I mean, I was a blackout drinker, Blackouts for me. Oh, I don't know how I know this because I don't have the memories, but I know that I knew what I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
I don't remember it, but I know I would have known what I was doing, surely. Well, that's what I believe anyway. I don't know. And you never get those memories back. And so, like, you know, you don't know what you did, who you were with, what you were saying. It is really terrifying to think that you can actually be that out of control, even if it's just minutes.
Exactly. And, you know, down the line, it's like I remember like most things, but to be honest, there's no doubt it's affected my memory. I was talking to my best mate the other day, and he's like, "Oh yeah, do you remember this?" And I'm like, "No." Do you remember?
Like you, Lisa.
I know. You know what? You've just made me think though, Ben. Looking back, right, through my teenage years, I have had people for years come up to me and said, "Do you remember that when we did this, or do you remember that?" And I have always said no, and I put it down to having a bad memory. And you know what? I drank a lot as a teenager. Like every weekend we would go out drinking. So I'm literally, this has just come to me, must have forgotten because I was blacking out even as a teenager. I was forgetting because I genuinely don't remember things. And Alex does it to me all the time. Do you remember that? She makes stuff up half the time. And I just go, yeah, you do. I know she does, right? Because sometimes I sit there going, yeah, that happened.
This is how I know I don't, because she doubts herself. Look at her like, I was blacking out. Oh no, she's making it up. It's that bloody Punch and Judy, isn't it?
I know, it's bad, isn't it? But you know what I do want to say, Ben? I genuinely, I'm really, really in awe of you. I think you've done so amazing, and especially at your age. And I know you said other people said that to you all the time, but I genuinely do wish that I'd stopped drinking earlier, especially in my 20s. Like I was 30 when it started to change, and I started to binge drink a lot more. And to think now, looking at you, that you had that to come, it would break my heart. It honestly, it would. So I just think you've got so many amazing times to come, and I just think your family must be so proud of you as well, because God, I bet they went through some with you.
And your 30s are like so good. Like I can't imagine what they'd have been like sober.
Yeah. Well, I'm about to find out.
Yeah, you are.
Mine back.
And enjoy them. Are your family dead proud of you now?
Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, of course. I think there was, it's strengthened our relationships all round. There's no doubt. I mean, I feel like I'm still, making up is the wrong word, but I know towards the end when I was the heaviest I was just getting passed back and forth to mum and dad's house. Like they're separated. So we'd meet at a service station. I'd go back with dad, meet there a week later. I'd go back with mum, purely because neither could handle me full time. Because honestly, they had to literally care for me full time. Like mum had to walk behind me like this, going up the stairs to bed, because I could fall over at any point. Like,
oh God, it must have been horrible for her.
Like I'd be eating and I'd go head first in it, because my body would just go, enough today. And you know, one of the worst lines is my mum said, she was like, honestly, like I opened your bedroom. No, she said I couldn't open your bedroom door anymore every morning anymore because I didn't know if you. And it's like not there as in physically, as in whether I was like, because the doctor said if he carries on like this, his body is going to pack in.
Yeah.
And that to me is like, I mean, my mum, you know, my parents are my rock, but my mum is, you know, my true best friend, and it's like I'm a huge mama's boy. But so to put her through that, I think, you know, it hurts me the most, I think. And to have the relationship we do now is the biggest gift, obviously. And you know, I think it's important to have someone in your family that you can really open up to about it. Like she's still got questions to this day, and we still talk about stories, and that's why I know so much about the times I can't remember, is because we can have that openness. Whereas my dad is someone that is immensely proud of me, but yet because his brother died of alcoholism, so he's not so open about it, and I have to respect that, and that's fine. But I know, you know, given this, he's obviously super proud. So for a while, both of them realised that they might not have a son. So I think we're all quite proud of ourselves.
Yeah,
You should be
what?
as
I feel
well.
dead proud of you as well. Like, and I know we've not known each other for very long, but I do feel like we've kind of followed your journey from quite early on and just watched you kind of take this in your stride. You really have. And I guess I want to finish on this question, unless Lisa's got anything else she wants to ask after it. But as a young man, how is sobriety?
I mean, what's there not to like? It's just so hard to. I mean, it's so hard to describe because it's just a complete flip. It feels like it's like I just have control, and it's like I can dream again, I can plan again, because I'd always make plans, I could never stick to them. I'd always try and have goals, I'd never stick to them. It was almost like life before, and I'm not saying this lightly, it was just one huge disappointment. And people go, oh no, but you had good times. It's like, yeah, but underlying everything was just this disappointment that actually you couldn't do anything. I couldn't plan to move house. I couldn't plan to go on holiday because one, I probably wouldn't make it there, and two, I'd never had the money to do it. And it just feels, the phrase "get your life back," but it's like so much more than that, because I'm so grateful for the fact that I've got it back. Do you know what I mean? Almost that feeling of, just thankful for everything, and thankful that my body didn't give in too soon, and thankful for this makes you I just wholeheartedly appreciate everything that comes at me. So yeah, it's very easy to sit here and go, life's great, but truly it's like, it's just kind of what I'm capable and able to feel and do, really.
I think you're amazing. Plus, where people can
Can't
follow
wait
you
for
and... Oh, you froze then, Lisa. Sorry.
I know my internet's naff. Sorry. Yeah. Before I just think you're just such an inspiration, and people need to hear your story and see that. I know it's like a term we do recover, but you are that, like we do, and you're the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like
shining
I've got
example.
Poster boy in my head.
Shining example.
Poster boy, love it.
Yeah, like a poster boy for sobriety. No, do you know what I mean? Like a shining example. No, that's old women would say that. But you know what I mean? Like people need to see you and see like the difference, because your story's just incredible of where you were and looking at you now. Like I can't even imagine that, Ben. I can't imagine you like that, and I just think it's incredible. So yeah, now you can tell us where people can find you.
Yeah, where they can find you, follow your blog, and join you on your journey, because you are such an inspiration.
Thank you. Well, you can read my blog at beyondthebottle.net, not .com. I always get that wrong. I presume you'll tag me on Instagram, will you?
Yeah.
That's covered. That's pretty much it, to be honest. Just
we'll put your links on and your tags on. But yeah, thank you so much, Ben. Honestly, I've really enjoyed speaking to you, and I think everybody will get a lot from this.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you again for joining us.
Oh, of course, anytime.
Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely.
We'll chat this. Bye.